Dear friends and fellows, welcome to HSC tutorial. And today's HSC tutorial's topic is hot works. I'm your host Javed, and you are watching Safety First. Let us look what is hot work. Hot work is any work process that produces flames or sparks, which present a fire ignition hazard to the surrounding environment and person. Examples of hot work: gas torch welding and cutting uses a flame to join or cut metal. Arc welding and cutting uses an electric arc between a metal electrode and a base material to join or cut metal. Grinding uses a grinding wheel that rotates at high speed to cut metal. Brazing and soldering uses heat to melt a filler metal that is used to join metals. In this presentation, we will discuss the hazards of hot work, hazard prevention safeguards and methods, personal protective equipment PPE, arc welding, torch welding, cutting and brazing, and lastly, cylinder handling and storage. Number one, hazards of hot work. The hazards associated with hot work: which environments require unique hazard prevention training and precaution. Hot work poses significant safety and health risks, including fire, flammable gases, toxic metal coatings, electric shock, and intense light. Dear friends and fellows, hot work presents a variety of hazards. Before hot work can begin, your supervisor will identify the hazards in your workplace and the HSA practitioner should verify it. The number one is fire hazard. Intense heat, sparks, or metal splatter produced during hot work can create fire hazard. Number two, electric shock. If you touch two metal objects containing voltage, you will become a part of the electrical circuit. Higher voltages increase the risk of injury or death. Number three, arc flash. Arc flash occurs when an electric current leaves its intended path and travels through the air from one conductor to another or to the ground. Number four, burns. Radiant energy, sparks, or metal splatter can cause serious burns. Number five, flammable gases. If allowed to accumulate, flammable gases can flash or explode with catastrophic results. Number six, intense light. The incredibly bright light of arc welding can cause serious eye damage. In addition, combustion creates gases and molten metal releases fumes, both of which are dangerous to inhale. However, certain metals and coated surfaces are especially prone to emitting toxic fumes and gases. Proper ventilation and respiratory protection are critical when performing hot work on materials containing the following: zinc, chromium, lead, cobalt, cadmium, mercury, or beryllium. Let us look at the environmental or the special hazards while carrying out hot work activity. The hazards of hot work intensify in certain environments, such as wells or other confined spaces. Potential hazards in oil or gas wells, flammable or combustible gases, vapors and liquids, toxic gases in deadly amounts, hazards in confined spaces, limited escape routes, limited visibility, which impedes awareness of injuries and delays emergency response, limited ventilation, presenting a greater risk of exposure to harmful fumes, displaced oxygen caused by welding fumes in a confined space, which can be fatal. The number two aspect is hazard prevention methods or safeguards. What you need to know: the roles and responsibilities of different individuals, administrative procedures, journal hazard control methods, additional controls, and safety restrictions. In this section, we look at best practices for keeping the workplace safe, including safety procedures and responsibilities. You will need to know the following: the roles and responsibilities of management, appointed supervisors, and welders, the administrative procedures that must precede any hot work activity, the journal hazard control used to keep you and co-workers safe before, during, and after hot work, the additional controls for environments with special hazard consideration, safety restrictions associated with hot work. These policies and procedures are an essential part of a safe work environment. Let us look what are the roles and responsibilities of the employee, the supervisor, and the management. The employee lays out the work area, keeps the work area clean, follows fire prevention and other safety controls, follows related procedures such as lockout, tagout, uses all personal protective equipment properly, uses all equipment properly, reports any safety issue. The supervisor conducts hazard assessments and identifies safety precautions, communicates and enforces safety procedures, assigns fire watches if required, secures authorization, assures that equipment is safe to use, tells the employee when to proceed. The management appoints a qualified supervisor and qualified welder, establishes the proper locations, policies, and procedures, assures that employees have the training they need to work safely, and advises contractors of the hazards. Your supervisor must take certain precautions before hot work begins. The most important of these is hazard assessment. The hazard assessment considers all the activities required for completing the task, the hazards associated with each of those activities, and any additional environmental hazards. Hazard assessment will guide the choice of hazard controls and the personal protective equipment. After the hazard assessment, your supervisor will perform the following administrative tasks. He will notify area management and employees of planned hot work activities to certify that hazards are thoroughly identified and addressed, acquire and complete hot work permits. Each separate operation requires a permit. Sometimes a new permit is needed for each shift or if new hazards are introduced. The organization should keep permits for at least 1 year after the hot work has been performed. After the hazard assessment, issuing the permit. Now, number three is hazard controls. Based on the hazard assessment, your supervisor will establish hazard controls for each risk, controlling combustible material. Remove all combustible materials 35 feet from the work area. Move combustibles located on the opposite side of partitions and ceilings that will be subject to welding or cutting. Avoid unmovable combustible material such as wooden floors. If unable to remove or avoid fire hazards, cover combustible floors or materials with fire blankets or other suitable non-combustible materials to contain slag and spark. Use guards. Establish restrictions. In some cases, hot work may be prohibited entirely. Additional fire prevention measures might require a fire watch. Establish a fire watch in areas where fires might develop. Continue the watch for at least 30 to 60 minutes after completion of hot work. Fire extinguishers. Provide at least one 10-pound ABC fire extinguisher in each hot work zone. Ducts and conveyor system. Shut down ducts and conveyor system that might carry spark. Monitor the air checking for flammable and explosive gases or vapors, if necessary, purge and inert the atmosphere, provide metal buckets or containers for safe disposal of hot work debris, position welding curtains to protect employees from intense light, provide the proper shade of lens, keep working conditions dry, and provide proper PPE to avoid electrical shock, provide high resistance grounding and proper PPE to avoid arc flash, install guards and provide proper PPE to avoid burns, fumes and other toxic byproducts, properly ventilate work areas and provide adequate respirators. When possible, strip toxic coatings from metal before beginning hot work. Have a look. A welding curtain shield employs from the direct rays of arc welding and cutting operations. Another welder uses a local exhaust duct to quickly remove toxic fumes and gases. Dear friends and fellows, you are watching Safety First. If you are new on this channel, kindly subscribe the channel. And if you find the video informative, then like and share. Let us look how to control hazards around confined spaces while carrying out hot work activity. Certain environments such as well sites, vessels, and other confined spaces require additional precaution. Move all ignition sources outside the hot work area. Use local exhaust ventilation to keep exposures within acceptable levels or limits. Follow your organization's respiratory protection program. Your supervisor will arrange for monitoring to evaluate air quality, potential contaminants, and ignition sources before beginning hot work on vessels that formerly contain flammable or toxic materials. Thoroughly clean them. Always vent and purge hollow spaces. Assure that oxygen is not displaced or use a supplied air respirator. Don't bring cylinders or welding machines inside the confined spaces, and follow your organization policies for working in confined spaces by implementing permit to work system. In spite of all the arrangements, still there are a few safety restrictions. In some conditions, you should never perform hot work. Never weld in the following locations: rooms where fire sprinklers are impaired, spaces with potentially explosive atmosphere, areas near the storage of large quantities of readily ignitable material. Never weld on the following material: metal that has combustible covers or layer, metal in close proximity to combustible. Before beginning any hot work, wait for your supervisor to finalize the permit. Only work on equipment if properly trained and authorized by the organization. Inspect all personal protective equipment. Inspect all hot work equipment. It includes welding machine, cutting set, grinder, or solder. Follow the lockout tagout program requirements and follow respiratory protection requirements. Now, let us look the segment of personal protective equipment. You must know the common PPE designed for hot work, how to select eye protection, the proper use of respirators. Personal protective equipment or PPE is essential for hot work operations. Your supervisor will identify required PPE as part of hazard assessment. Required PPE for hot work may include skin, body, and foot protection. To protect against burns, cover all exposed flesh. Personal protective equipment that protects against electric shock includes insulated gloves and rubber-soled shoes, buttonable collar, welding hood with adjustable lens filter, fire-resistant gloves, fire-resistant jacket hanging outside of pants without open pocket, fire-resistant trousers without cuffs on pant legs, and leather high-top boots with steel toes. To protect your eyes, your supervisor will specify the type of eye protection needed for the task. Here are few types of eye protection: welding hood with properly shaded lenses, cutting or burning goggles for torch cutting, full face shields for grinding, safety glasses worn under welding hoods or face shields when grinding. Auto darkening lenses provide continuous protection by adopting a varying levels of light. If using an auto darkening lens, check the manufacturer specification to confirm that it is rated for the correct intensity. Before starting work, check that the battery power is sufficient. Remember, lens filter shade numbers range from 2 to 14, higher numbers providing greater protection. The chart below shows the recommended lens filter shade number for specific types of hot work. For touch soldering, 2, touch brazing, 3, oxygen cutting, 4, 5, and 6. For gas welding, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And for carbon arc welding, 13 and 14, and like so on. Different intensities of light require different level of protection. Light intensity varies based on the type of hot work activity, the thickness of the metal being worked on, and the arc current used. As this chart shows, gas welding creates more light than torch soldering because it is used on thick metal. Let us look what are the respiratory protection. Filter type respirators use cartridges to filter incoming air and remove contaminants. They are required for open air hot work with metals containing toxic substances such as galvanized steel, zinc, or chromium. They will not provide adequate protection in confined spaces lacking sufficient ventilation. Consult manufacturer specifications to determine the appropriate type of cartridges. Remember, you must be trained and authorized before using a respirator. Only wear a respirator designed and rated for the hazard involved. Supplied air respirators supply the face mask with clean air from outside the work area. They provide critical life support when working in spaces where flames may consume available oxygen. They are always required for hot work with beryllium materials. They may be required when working with materials containing cadmium, lead, and mercury. They are always required in a confined space with inadequate ventilation. Remember, follow your organization's respiratory protection policy. In the arc welding, you must know how to safely handle arc welding tools and what are the safety procedures. Arc welding is a process that manipulates electricity to melt metal. The welder creates an electrical arc between an electrode, which is charged by a welding machine, and a base material. You must know how to keep yourself and those around you safe when you are involved in arc welding. Check for all components of arc welding are in good condition, starting with the electrode holder. Electrode holder must be specifically designed for the arc cutting and welding, must be properly insulated and able to safely handle the maximum current. When done welding or if leaving the holder unattended, remove and properly dispose of the electrode to prevent contact with people or conducting objects. Never dip a hot electrode or electrode holder in water. After the electrode holder, the number two are cables. Before starting the welding activity, check the condition of cables. Is the cable completely insulated? Is it flexible, capable of handling the maximum current requirements? Areas that have been repaired or spliced must be at least 10 feet away from the electrode holder unless the connectors and connecting lugs have been same level of insulation as the cable. In addition, ground the welding machine properly. Keep cables clear of walkways, ladders, and stairways. They can be strung overhead with non-metallic hanger. Immediately remove all damaged and worn cables from service until properly repaired. Remember, damaged cables can cause spark, arcs, and shock. You have to follow your organization lockout tagout program and any PPE requirement. Before you begin, inspect your personal protective equipment. Inspect all equipment to assure that it meets the manufacturer's specification and make sure that the welding machine's power supply has a circuit breaker or can be easily disconnected. When you are finished, shut off the welding machine at the end of each shift and whenever the machine is moved. Assure that stored energy is released in accordance with the manufacturer's specification. While carrying out torch welding, cutting, or brazing, you must know the equipment inspection procedures, safe use of torch cutting equipment, safety guidelines for supply hoses, and safe use of cylinder valves. Before torch welding, cutting, or brazing, inspect all equipment. Regularly follow preventive maintenance procedures and consult the manufacturer's specification. First of all, you have to make a pre-shift inspection. Torches and hoses check for leaks, damage, and loose connections. Oxygen cylinders and fittings. They must be properly labeled, distinguishable, and free of oil and grease. Make sure all components of welding operators are clean and free of oil and grease. You have to inspect the valves and regulators as well. Tag and remove defective, damaged, or worn equipment from service. Either repair or discard it. To use the torch safely, use flashback arrestor. Light torches only with approved tools. When finished working, shut off valves and relieve hose pressure. Keep hoses clear of walkways, ladders, and stairways. For example, you can string hoses overhead by using non-metallic hangers. You can tape parallel lengths of hose together to prevent tangling, but don't tape more than one third of each 12-inch section. Check that hose couplings cannot be disconnected with a pull. Separating them should require a twisting motion. Don't use the same hose for different material. Oxygen and fuel gas hoses are not interchangeable. Don't use a single hose with more than one gas passage. When done with the task, relieve hose pressure. When you are finished working, store your hose in a ventilated area or box. Remember, proper use of cylinder valves keeps you safe and keeps the equipment working longer. Always open valves slowly and carefully. When opening valves, stand to the side, not to the front. Don't open fuel gas cylinders near ignition sources. Don't open acetylene cylinders too far. Three-fourths of a spindle turn or less is ideal. Never turn the spindle more than 1.5 times. Before you connect a valve to a regulator, open the valve a crack and then quickly close it. This allows any foreign material in the valve port to be discharged. Dear friends and fellows, you are watching Safety First. For handling and storing cylinders safely, you must know the hazard communication resources, identification requirements, safe handling practices, guidelines for moving and storage, and environments and practices to avoid. Before beginning work, you must fully understand the hazards in your work area. Hazard communication is a system for clearly conveying hazards to everyone who needs to know. Your employer will provide hazard communication training. Safety data sheets include the manufacturer's statement of origin and the contents of cylinder and the hazards of the contents. Use the SDS and your supervisor hazard assessment to select the proper personal protective equipment. For the identification of the cylinder, use status tags indicating if the cylinder is full, in use, or empty. All cylinders must have proper GHS compliant labels that identify contents and classify hazards. Be aware of signs at storage areas such as danger, flammable, no sources of ignition, smoking, or open flames. Store cylinders with caps and tags on. What is the cylinder valve safety? Close valves, bleed the lines, remove regulators, and replace valve safety cap when storing cylinders, before moving cylinder, when a cylinder is empty, and when leaving cylinders unattended. All cylinders must be equipped with a handle or wrench so that they can be turned off immediately when necessary. Prior to moving, get authorization. Confirm the cylinder's contents and review the SDS safety data sheets for handling requirements. Close valves, bleed the lines, remove regulators, and replace valve safety caps. And make sure that your planned route is clear of obstacles. While moving cylinders, use a cart designed for this purpose. Use a chain to secure them to the cart. Stay on designated pathways. Never lay cylinders on their sides and never roll them by hand. Let us go through the cylinder storage guidelines. Storage area must be cool and dry, well ventilated, clean and free from combustible material, and protected from recognized hazards. Always keep cylinders upright, bleed the lines, remove regulators, and replace valve with safety cap. Follow safe practices for additional cylinders, whether full or empty. Keep all cylinders and combustible materials 20 feet away from stairs, aisles, and elevators. Keep the combustible and flammable materials 20 feet away from all cylinders. Keep oxygen cylinders separate from fuel gas cylinders and combustible materials with one of the following: a 5-foot non-combustible barrier with a half-hour fire resistant rating, a 20-foot distance. But some gases have additional storage requirements. You need to comply with SDS. Never use cylinders for anything other than the intended use. Never move or store gas cylinders in confined spaces. Never position cylinders near ignition sources. Never position cylinders between electrical sources. Never hoist cylinders improperly, such as with magnets. Never use acetylene with a pressure greater than 15 psi gauge or 30 psi absolute. Never use hammers or wrenches to open cylinders that have fixed hand wheels. Never strike an electrode against a cylinder when striking an arc. Never refill cylinder by your own method, and never mix gases in a cylinder. Dear friends and fellows, let us conclude. Hot work can be dangerous. Your active participation in workplace safety is essential. Be able to recognize hazards. Be aware of the hazards in your workplace and know what factors increase the danger. Know when it is too dangerous to perform hot work. Be prepared. Be sure that you understand safety requirements and work practices before starting work. Conduct inspections. Be confident that all parts of your equipment and personal protective equipment are undamaged and working properly. And finally, communicate any hazards you discover to your supervisor, HSC staff, and co-workers immediately. Training session is over now. If you have any question, please ask in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and share. Hope to see you soon with the new HSC tutorial. Till then, take care. Good luck and Allah Hafiz.